Tennessee Life is sponsored by Next to New, an upscale consignment shop serving Knoxville. nexttonewknox.com. And by The Flower Pot, for over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations. knoxvilleflowerpot.com. And by viewers like you. Thank you. His life's work has been studying the science of death, and his research has made Tennessee a center for forensic studies. An in-depth interview with Dr. William Bass inside his world-famous bone collection and state-of-the-art anthropology lab.
I see these individuals when they come in as a challenge to see whether I have the ability to figure out who they are and what happened to them.
He has made his mark on Tennessee football, both as a player and a coach. Coach Johnny Majors talks to us about football, family, and the love for his home state.
I've been with the good and the bad, the tough, and that's good. That's good for people.
Those stories next on Tennessee Life.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Tennessee Life. I'm your host, Vicki Lawson. If you have ever cheered the Tennessee Vols inside Neyland Stadium, you know the overwhelming school spirit that defines the players, students, alumni, and fans. In fact, we will talk more about that with legendary coach Johnny Majors later in the program. But did you know that there is a collection underneath the stadium that has drawn attention from around the world? A collection of 7,000 skeletons. Forensic anthropologist Dr. William Bass started researching bones and bodies at UT in 1971. He has written the textbook on the study of bones. But it is the Body Farm, a space Dr. Bass acquired to research decomposing bodies, that has received the most attention. It also made Knoxville a central point for police to study forensics. GIST correspondent Frank Murphy sat down with Dr. Bass inside the Bone Doctor's collection. We also got a tour at the state-of-the-art Bass Forensic Anthropology building.
This is an individual who has a hip replacement.
Dr. Bass, you're famous for being the bone doctor, for knowing all about the inside of our bodies. When did you first get interested in studying the human body?
I graduated in 1951 and the Korean War was on, so I went in the military and spent 3 years in the Army, assigned to the Army Medical Research Laboratory, studying the harmful effects of noise and vibration on the body. And when I got out of the military, I went back to school. I was going to be back to graduate school. I was going to be a college counselor. And the first semester, I took not only counseling classes, but one in anthropology, literally osteology, which is the study of bones. And all of a sudden I thought, I like this.
Really?
The problem with counseling is that nothing's ever positive. And, you get, well, this individual relaxed out and that individual relaxed that way. But the good thing about osteology is that is always the humerus.
Right.
That's my humerus, that's yours and the humerus. No matter where on the earth you are, that's the humerus.
So psychology versus osteology, it's like you prefer an empty skull to a full one.
That's right. Exactly. Okay, that's very well. I like the osteology, and it literally changed my major, switched my major from counseling to anthropology. That's the best move I ever made, really.
Well, then what's the path that got you eventually to Tennessee?
Came to University of Tennessee June 1st of 1971. The medical examiner knew me. It was Jerry Francisco, who was a medical examiner at that time. And he asked if I would serve as a forensic anthropologist for the medical examiner system. I said, sure, I'd be happy to.
Because now, coming from Kansas, you're used to identifying bones, and now here you are in Tennessee.
And he writes to 95 medical examiners in each county in Tennessee. He says, he should have said, we have an individual on the staff now to identify skeletal remains.
Right.
But he didn't. He said identify dead bodies.
Oh, big difference.
That's a big difference. And so, So I started getting all these maggot-covered bodies that were coming.
Here you are dealing with this flesh-covered body. Your goal is to get the flesh out of the way, to study the bones underneath. Why is that?
Okay. In Tennessee, they ask you 2 questions. They ask you, who is it, and how long have they been there? I thought, if I'm going to be talking to police, I better know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So I went to the dean in the fall of '71, and I said, Dean, I need some land to put dead bodies on.
And the dean must have said what?
Well, everybody said, what did he say?
Yeah.
Well, he didn't say anything. He picked up the phone book and found the man over on the agricultural campus who handles land. And he said, call him. And I called him. And before I came here in '71, in the late '60s, the university had raised pigs and had all these sow barns.
Right.
They were getting out of the pig raising business, had all these vacant sow barns around.
Yeah.
So I ended up with a sow barn at the Holston Farm, which is where the Holston and French Broad River come together and make this Tennessee.
How did the body farm that we know and have heard about get started?
Now this was, the sow barn was used from '71 to '80. Now it takes more things, it takes other things besides just dead bodies and skeletons for a forensic program. You need people, you need master's degree students and doctoral degree students who are interested in forensic anthropology. And when I came here, the anthropology department was an undergraduate program only. And the university wanted to add a master's and a PhD program. So what we did was we started a master's program in '73 and a PhD program in '75. So by '75 we were getting enough workers, if you want to say that, in the vineyard to go. Yeah,
okay, to make wine.
Well, we had enough researchers to get up and begin to do research experiments. The sow barn is about 45 minutes from where we are right now.
Yeah.
And you drive out there, you do your research, you come back, you shot a morning or an afternoon. We needed something closer in, and business was picking up. We were getting a lot more bodies coming in. And so I went back to the university and said, hey, I need some land closer in. And so they gave me 3 acres back of the UT hospital. I left happy.
So you bring a body. Where'd you get the body?
The original ones came in through the medical examiner system.
Okay, so
See,
unknown?
Mainly
corpses?
unknown, many unknown, some known. Then we really wanted to begin research. How long does it take for flies to appear, maggots to destroy the skin slippage and all that sort of stuff?
You are famous for having the world's only body farm.
That was the first one.
For
That's
years
right.
and years
That's
and
right.
years.
That's true.
The first and only. And all that time you've always said, well, there needs to be more body farms.
Oh yeah, everywhere. Your major factor is decay. And so, not everybody is in the temperate zone that we are here in Knoxville.
So if you had a body farm, you would put one in Arizona and you'd put one in the north and one in the...
That's right, you would.
Well, there are some new body farms
There
now.
are some new ones. In fact, I have three of my doctoral students are teaching at Texas State University now in San Marcos. This is mid-Texas. This is between Dallas and San Antonio. And they have started a body farm there. And
I think they call it the Body Ranch.
They call it the Body Ranch, that's right. Oh, they don't call it a body farm. And it literally was, and probably still is, a ranch.
Yeah, you've lost 2 wives to cancer, you've dealt with death personally, but you're one of the most cheerful people around.
Well, thank you.
How do you maintain that, that demeanor?
It's interesting what your mind can do. I hate death. I hate mourning. I don't like any of that scene at all. However, I never see a forensic case as a dead body. I don't see any of these as dead bodies. I see these individuals when they come in as a challenge to see whether I have the ability to figure out who they are and what happened to them. And I can make that shift fairly easy. I mean, we lose a lot of graduate students who want to be forensic anthropologists on the first case that you go out and it smells horrible. And, I don't want to do this. But I've done it long enough to know that, hey, a dead body is going to smell like putrescine and cadaverine.
Yeah.
But somebody has to look at that and figure out who that individual is and what happened to them. And to me, that's exciting. Then, if there's been foul play, you want to be able to help the district attorney or the police and the family in finding who did my loved one in.
Yeah.
And so you're helping society solve some problems.
You're called on to some very high-profile crimes. and just other cases in general. You looked at the Big Bopper, but that's not. You also looked at some other very famous remains.
Probably the most famous has been the Lindbergh's first child, who was kidnapped and killed, died.
I mean, the 1932.
32.
Yeah.
32. Was buried for many years. There was an attempt made to clear Bruno Hauptmann's name. The Lindbergh baby died the night he was abducted. Yeah. Probably killed, taking him out of the building. And was thrown out about a mile away from the house in New Jersey, near Princeton, New Jersey. And Lindbergh at that time was so powerful that he said, I want my son cremated. And he was cremated, and he flew out over the Atlantic Ocean and spread the ashes of his first child into the ocean. And the only thing that is last of that now are 11 bones. There's no way of making a positive identification.
Right.
See, at that time, we couldn't do this, didn't have DNA. But DNA doesn't come along till the 90s. And this was the late 80s, so we didn't have DNA then. But with DNA, you could get a sample from the Lindbergh family and grind up these bones and get DNA out of it. So you could do that. But the length of the bones match a 20-month-old male, and he was 20 months old when he died.
All right.
And so there are no inconsistencies in it at all.
And when you studied it, you found the same things that
Dr. Krugman found.
Okay. And then as the popularity of forensics grew, people wanted to make TV shows about you and so on and so on. And that led to a second career for you as a writer.
The writer, that's true.
Well, you'd already written a textbook. You've written the definitive textbook on bones, the osteology textbook.
Yeah, still used all over the world.
Yeah. So you call yourself the bone doctor for that very good reason. Or we call you that, I guess. What do you call yourself?
Just Bill.
Oh, okay. But tell me about that transition into the TV documentaries and ultimately the nonfiction and the Jefferson Bass novels.
I had retired, and the students asked me when I retired, when was I going to write a popular book?
Well, they didn't like the osteology textbook?
Well,
that wasn't popular enough for them?
You don't want to curl up on a cold night with an osteology book. They asked me, and one day, this is just sheer luck again. I mean, the phone rang, and it was John Jefferson, who was a science writer at Oak Ridge.
Yes.
I was impressed with John. John's knowledge of science is good. And while he was over here, I thought, well, I'll ask John. So I said, John, how would you like to write a book with me? Well, we thought about it. And eventually, I like to tease John. It was a courtship, you see.
Yes.
Okay, but he doesn't. He gets excited when I say that. But anyway, to make a long story short, we decided we would write a nonfiction book on my cases.
And that's called Death's Acre.
Death's Acre. And this has cases from Kansas and all over the country that I had done.
So it kind of takes through that chronology of what led up to the creation of the body farm.
That's right.
And
it has the history of the body farm in that.
Body farm.
That's one of the best histories of it. Then John wanted to try his hand at some fictional books. And so we began a series called the Body Farm Novel Series.
In addition to the fame from the Jefferson Bass novels, you've been recognized by the University of Tennessee, and of course many law enforcement agencies too, but I'm thinking specifically here at UT with a building named after you. And that was a big deal because your father and your grandfather had buildings named after them.
Me, that's right. Academic buildings.
Academic buildings.
Yeah. 2 elementary school buildings, and in my case, a college research building.
And that is a state-of-the-art facility for the study of any level of corpse, right?
All of these individuals came through the Bass building, if they were. That's what it's called now. It's a William M. Bass Forensic Anthropology building is what it is.
And in it, it has the autopsy suite.
That's right. It has 2 autopsy suites. It has a cold room. It's a morgue, essentially. It's a morgue. And processing for all of these skeletal material to get the soft tissue off and all that sort of stuff.
I know in one of the things you've talked about before is what is going to happen to you when you're done.
I want to be cremated and I've given my cremated remains to, and they're not in this room, but then in the next room to where we are right now, we have a collection of cremations, these little boxes.
Yeah.
We prefer not to have them ground up. I mean, in other words, the body is cremated and you just keep all the bones. You can identify bones
Right.
if they're not ground up. You know, I'm 85 and I'm not going to be around, you know, another 85 years, so somebody has got to take over.
Yeah.
And so what I'm trying to do is to teach those people who are taking over.
If someone were to call you a year from now or 2 years from now and say, hey, Dr. Bass, you're almost 90, but I got a case, you'd be all over it.
I would do it, sure, absolutely. You have to keep your mind busy.
It's not often that an athlete is revered as both a player and a coach, but Tennessee-born Johnny Majors has certainly earned many titles in both arenas. You could say football is just in his blood. Majors' own father was a high school football coach and standout player himself. Majors is in the College Football Hall of Fame for his skills as a player, and as head coach, he led the Tennessee Vols to victory in 3 SEC championships. Coach Majors sat down with me to talk about growing up in Lynchburg, his never-ending love of football, and retirement in his home state of Tennessee. Coach Majors, it's a pleasure for you to be here today, and we're so glad that you're joining us for this segment of Tennessee Life. Thinking back to your upbringing, your Tennessee Life upbringing, and you were born, I understand, in Lynchburg. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's a neat little place, a lot of wonderful people, and very moderate people, very understanding. I don't remember one guy that I thought was a real bad guy in Moore County, and at that time there probably weren't over 2,000 or 3,000 people. It's the smallest county in the state in area. I believe it was in population till just a few years ago. Our license plates were always 95, and I took pride in 95. I thought that's unique, and Moore County was 95, but it's 94 now, I believe. And I go back there a couple of times a year. I was down there over the 4th of July for about a week, staying at Sewanee, where my mother and father lived for about 20 years or 25 years after we left Lynchburg, and we moved to Huntland, where my dad was a high school coach, and we won a lot of football games in Huntland. But I grew up in Lynchburg, and it was a neat place to grow up.
What were some of your first memories of playing sports, like your high school years?
Well, I remembered my dad showing me how to punt and how to pass and running is natural. A great running back like Tony Dorsett I coached, and my brothers and I were good runners. And Johnny Jones at Tennessee and Chuck Webb at Tennessee and some of the great backs of Tennessee history. It's natural ability, but you can improve your running by a coach helping you talk about how to sidestep and stiff arm. My dad showed me how to do that when I was, 6, 7, 8 years old, and all of us could kick spirals and throw spirals. My first competition, I couldn't wait to play high school football, but I played at Lynchburg my freshman year. My dad drove back and forth to Huntland, 19 miles south of Lynchburg, to start the first football team they had there. And he was head coach in football, basketball, and baseball. And he also had coached in Lynchburg. And but drove back and forth. He didn't want to move because he had 6 kids, and Bob Majors, who made All-American at Tennessee in '71, had just been born, and I was 14 and a freshman. Well, I was a starting quarterback at Lynchburg High School, but it's now they call it Moore County High School. I was a starting quarterback and played safety man full time, played a little halfback on offense, and I weighed 135 pounds, and I was a good athlete. We all were. And fortunately, because our dad was a fabulous athlete, had great coordination, and he knew the game. Well, my first start against Manchester, we lost 58-0. And I was very nervous before the game. I had a hard time spiraling the ball and also punting and passing warm-ups because I was nervous my first game, and I was about to cry. And I'm 14 years old, and my dad was at the game. He was standing right outside the end zone because his team didn't play that night. I walked up to him and kind of teared up, and I said, "Daddy, I can't make the ball spiral, punting or passing." He said, "Well, you're nervous, and that's typical. Either as long as you play football, that's typical, being nervous. But this is your first game. I think it'll work out once you get into it." Well, sure enough, I said, I threw some spirals. I threw 3 to Manchester, our opponents, and they ran back for touchdowns. They beat us 58-0. And my mother missed my first touchdown in my whole career because she was changing Bob's diapers in the car while the game was going on. I never have forgiven Bob. I give him a hard time even today about that. And the only game we won, we beat my dad's team over at Huntland, 19-13, and I scored 2 of the 3 touchdowns. I intercepted a pass and ran one back, and I scored on a run. He said, "That'll be the last time a son of mine plays against me," because we won. And sure enough, he moved us the week of my first game the next year as a sophomore, and I started. And we won 25 straight games.
With your high school playing records, several colleges had their eye on you. Was it always a clear decision to come and play for the University of Tennessee?
My desire was to be a West Point football player. And I wouldn't say this now because I'd want to go to Tennessee, period. But I wanted to be a Kentucky basketball player because they were the greatest team in the country at that time when I was in grade school and high school. And I wanted to be a Boston Red Sox player or a St. Louis Cardinal baseball player. So I had my dreams to be all 3. But I wanted to come to Tennessee because they had this single wing offense. And then I knew about the tradition, but they used the same offense I did. I played them as a tailback, and I fit right into that offense, but I would have played quarterback in college or maybe running back or both. In Auburn, place I felt comfortable about, they only had a 27,000 seat stadium, can you believe? Now it's over 80,000. Tennessee has held 50,000 now, it's 108. But this is much bigger. I couldn't imagine those people in orange shirts or red shirts in Alabama not missing me. So next to the last day before Sunday, my mother said, "John, I know you're having a hard time deciding." And they said, "If you're having that hard a time deciding," as I told you, they never made decisions. They'd let us make our own decision. But they would give us advice and said, "I'd like to see you stay close to home and stay in the state." That did it. I was excited about playing for General Neyland. I weighed about 150, but I said I weighed 155. I tell everybody that because it made me feel bigger. And he said, "How much do you weigh, Majors?" And before I could say 155, Sir Farmer Johnson beat me. He said, "General, he weighs 175. Well, that was at least 20 to 25 pounds more than I actually weighed. Okay, so that was that. Now, 3 years later, that was 1952 in November. 3 years later, I'm a junior, and we played Georgia Tech here at Knoxville, and we tied 7-7. And I never left the game. I played 60 minutes. I'm one of the last people, and maybe the last person to play 60 minutes at UT. But after the game, my brother Joe was up here. Joe's got a great memory. He was a freshman in Alabama. He was up here in the locker room when I came out of the shower after we tied 7-7. I hadn't after the game. So before the game, I weighed 162. I know that. That's my junior year. The general happened to be in there, and he said, "Get on the scales, Majors." And he said, 147. I knew Farmer was lying to me. He remembered what Farmer Johnson told him 3 years before. I didn't even know he knew my name. I knew he knew my name as a junior. I didn't even know he knew my name when I was recruited. But that's how good a memory he had.
Tell me a little bit about your coaching career. Take me through your coaching career from things that really stand out in your mind.
I had a great background from the time I could walk. I did, by osmosis, being around my dad, taught how to play it right. Bowden White, the Tennessee people, the Neyland people, Harvey Robinson, Bowden White in particular, and his staff. I went to Mississippi State where they hadn't been winning at all for years, hadn't been to a bowl game in 21 years or so. We went to a bowl game the 4th year I was there. I was part of it. I wasn't the main reason we went. I took tough jobs everywhere I went. Every job I took, Iowa State, Pittsburgh, Tennessee were all down when I took the jobs, and I left them all in better shape than what they were. So I learned from great people, and I was well-grounded fundamentally, and I wasn't afraid to hire somebody that knew something I didn't know.
What was it like to come back to UT as a head coach?
That was the toughest decision in my life. I had it going. Here, Tennessee calls me at the apex of my career, at the height of my career, and being a national coach of the year. And we built a program, one of the greatest in the country. And everybody that followed me always had success. So to be remembered, people say, how would you like to be remembered? Well, I said, I hope I'm around here a lot longer. But whenever people say, well, we remember him as so-and-so, that I was a builder, that I was a really outstanding builder, and I left everything in better shape than what it was when I got there.
Coach Majors, it has certainly been an honor and a pleasure to sit here with you today and for you to share your Tennessee life. Thank you so much.
I'd be glad to come anytime, and if you want me to, I won't talk as long next time, but I'm always going to do anything to help public television and radio.
Thank you. Majors has made many images and other materials available at the Tennessee State Library and Archives. We hope you've enjoyed our in-depth conversations with two Tennessee legends. I'm Vicki Lawson. Hope to see you for the next Tennessee Life.
Tennessee Life is sponsored by Next to New, an upscale consignment shop serving Knoxville, nexttonewknox.com, and by The Flower Pot, for over 100 years, offering flowers and same-day delivery with 2 convenient Knoxville locations, knoxvilleflowerpot.com.